Hello YouTube, I was feeling a little inspired, so here is the second video for today. I just finished a book and I have some notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, called DMT, The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman. It is a very strange book, and this isn't really a review, I'm just going to talk about some things that really stood out to me that I think people should know about and that I think some of you may be like, what, is that real? So this book is about a researcher who in the 1990s was studying DMT, which is a chemical compound, a drug, I guess you could say as well. And he would study the psychedelic effects of the drugs on volunteers that would come in, and they would take the DMT intravenously by him, and he would study what they went through. And my God, is this incredible, what they went through. The book is really, really good, but it needs an editor or a better editor, because there are lots of parts of it that are not so good, that are kind of boring, that aren't really about DMT. They're more about Rick personally. And even though he's a really fascinating guy, I didn't really get into the book for that. And there's like stuff about the bureaucracy of Buddhism and like the power structures in the North America, and that was all, I don't know. It wasn't necessarily in the book. So long story short, if you decide to read this book, my advice is to read the first couple of chapters, skip the parts that are more about Rick, unless you're curious about his adventure to get the DMT, which was a huge struggle working with and it kind of shows how broken our system is in terms of studying these substances. He has to go to the DEA, and then the DEA says he has to go to the FDA. DEA is the Drug Enforcement Agency, FDA is the Food and Drug Administration, and the FDA says he has to go back to the DEA, and it's just a whole lot of bureaucracy and nonsense. And, that may be super interesting to you. It wasn't to me. It was a little bit, but it wasn't super interesting compared to the rest of the stuff. So what was super interesting about this book? The stories that this guy tells about people's trips on DMT blew my mind. People would take this substance, and within seconds, they would be, I'm not kidding when I say this, transported to another reality. Or as that's how it's described, they would see lights and beams and all this stuff, right? And what would happen is some people would just get stuck in the lights and the beams. They would just see all these, colors and all that. But then Rick would tell them, you have to go deeper. And the people that went deeper would go, and I don't even think words do a good job of describing it. And maybe that's one of the fatal flaws about a book about DMT, is that he's trying to describe these experiences that are, I believe the word is ineffable. Words don't do them justice. But they would literally go deeper into past the lights, and they would see these beings. They would describe them as these like amorphous beings. Somebody described them as clowns, somebody described them as elves, and a lot of people talked about seeing these creatures in this other reality after they took DMT. And it's crazy because it sounds like this book is science fiction, right? But no, this is a real researcher who gave these people the substance that allowed them to unlock another reality while they were sitting in that room, by the way, and meet these other creatures. The creatures, they would say things like, and this gets so creepy, it's like they would be like, we're so happy you're back, we're happy to see you again. And I think that is wild that more people don't talk about this phenomenon that DMT allows people to experience. So that's part of the book, and it's incredible because Rick doesn't really know how to deal with this. People are telling him about these creatures or beings that they're seeing, and he says to them like, they're probably just hallucinations or, manifestations of your subconscious. And they're like, no. The volunteers are like, Rick, they're real. Like, they are actual things that we encountered. And this happens consistently with many of the volunteers that come in. And he's like, well, it could be just like a waking dream, because in a dream can feel real, right? But then they say to him, the volunteers who took it and had these experiences, they're like, no, it wasn't a dream either. Like, this was Like, I know what a dream feels like. This was not a dream. And Rick realizes that the current framework that he utilizes I think I may have used utilized one too many times, but the current framework I believe it's called the biomedical framework or something like that, just isn't able to capture this experience. He doesn't even know the words to utilize to talk to them about it. And the only way he ends up being able to process it is by just believing them and believing in their experience and saying and accepting it as a reality that they are seeing these beings. And then in addition to that, so that was one incredible part of the book that I just had to talk about on YouTube and like share with you guys. You could read it, the book in the description down below, or buy it off Amazon or whatever. But beyond that, I want to talk. Well, let me think about this for a second. What else do I want to say about DMT, the spirit molecule? I almost want you to just read it and then share your thoughts down below in the comments section if you do read it. But the other thing I want to say is how Rick talks about how DMT is not necessarily good and it's not necessarily bad. It can be both of these things, or it can be neutral. Because he has one person in the book who takes the DMT, and excuse me, this is going to be a little graphic, so spoiler warning of graphic nature. But somebody describes getting raped by 2 crocodiles on the DMT, and they describe it as a real thing that happens to them. And I thought that was insane. I was like, what is going on in this book? So that happens as well in the book. And then ultimately, and it's a very negative experience for the guy, obviously. And Rick doesn't know how to process that either. He's like, oh my God, you could have this really bad negative experience. And Rick attributes it to the guy going into the experience and not being ready to deal with some of his own demons. So I thought that was a really interesting insight about psychedelics and DMT in particular, not in particular, but psychedelics, is that the mindset you go into when you do one of these substances, whether it's DMT or psilocybin or whatever, has a huge impact on what you get out of the experience. So that guy, I believe his name is Ken, with the crocodiles, went into it and wasn't dealing with the demons in his life. So when he did the DMT, he was fully confronted face to face with his demons in the manifestation of these 2 crocodiles. Whereas other individuals who do the DMT, they end up seeing these beings as benevolent and all of that, and it feel love. They feel like they are loved by the universe, and they walk into the light. It's almost like a near-death experience for them, where they die and they feel the universe like hugging them. And I think that is also, and the reason why, or at least Rick hypothesizes or theorizes, is because these people went into the experience and were open to it and were willing to let go, essentially, which is just insane that a substance can have an effect on your mindset going into it, or has an effect based off of your mindset going into utilizing the substance. Just crazy. So the other thing I want to talk about with it, I know I'm all over the place in this video, but the other thing I want to talk about is how Rick says that DMT may be endogenous. So what that means is that it's produced within your body, and he believes that it's produced in the pineal gland of the brain, which is the center of the brain. There's this little gland called the pineal gland, and he believes that DMT is released at birth, which is, obviously a very stressful experience, at death, and at near-death experiences. So when people talk about a near-death experience and they say that they saw this light and they saw these beings or their ancestors or what have you, he believes that that was actually a huge release of DMT in the pineal gland that is happening, that is producing this experience. Now, obviously, there needs to be more research to study the level of DMT in the pineal gland when one of these experiences is happening. Or, for example, if an animal dies, we can probably extract the pineal gland and analyze the DMT levels to see if it is still there post-death, right? The DMT. So that was just crazy as well. and fascinating to hear about endogenous DMT and how that's related to near-death experiences, NDEs, or death or birth. Just absolutely wild. And his point with that is to say that these people. Well, let me think about this for a second. His point with that is just to. I don't know if he has a point with that. I think he's just saying that that's the thing. But that happens. Anyway, let me think. Is there anything else I want to say about this book? I think that the last thing I want to say about this book is that I'm shocked that more people aren't talking about this. Like, I'm shocked that DMT is not a more widely discussed substance in our American culture. Because to me, like, I knew about some of these stories beforehand. Like, I'd heard anecdotally Joe Rogan and, a psyched substance, and a lot of people talk about their experiences online. But I hadn't heard of like a researcher who had, done rigorous trials with the substance and had really tried to understand what was going on. So in that way, I was kind of like, oh wow, this kind of substantiates a lot of those anecdotes. But there's still so many question marks of it. And I think he ends the book. Oh, well, that's what I'll say. If you end up reading this book, I would say, I think I may have mentioned in the beginning, read the first couple chapters, read the trials that he did, and then also skip all the boring parts. And by boring parts, I mean if Rick is talking about the FDA, you could skip it if you like. And towards the end of the book, you could skip all the stuff about Buddhism. Not that Buddhism isn't super fascinating, but Rick's interaction with the bureaucracy of it is just not... It didn't need to be in this book, in my opinion. And then besides that, let me know what you think. If you end up reading this book, check it out and let me know. Because I was shocked and blown away, and I felt like I had to share my awness of this book. I would give it maybe... it would be 5 out of 5 if it was 100 pages. But since... it goes on for 300 plus pages, I'm going to have to give it a 3.5 maybe out of 5 stars, which may sound a little harsh for a book that is so mind-blowing, but I think, I think that's what I'll give it and recommend that you check it out, and that's it. Long story short, we can... Oh, I should also say that when he talks about these other beings, at the end he theorizes about what's going on, and he describes the mind as like a Chi channel. Also, there's a lot of other crazy stuff, but I don't want to go into everything in this video. As like a Chi channel. And like we're currently on the normal channel, like our current physical reality. And when people do DMT, what they're doing is they're changing the channel of their existence and going to another reality. And I just thought that was so wild. And when they're only seeing the lights and all of that, like I was describing, that's like the Chi, the brightness on the Chi is changing, their contrast. But when they go deeper into the experience, they're changing the channel of their existence. And I thought that was crazy. Anyway, I think you can tell how much this book like shook me based off of how all over the place I am in this video. But I think after reading this book, you'll probably understand where this energy is emanating from. Long story short, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Check out the book. Let me know what you think. If you're future Scott, I hope you appreciate this video, because a lot of the time I'll make these videos more so for a future version of myself to kind of look back and be like, what did I think when I read this book for the first time, or when I was that age? So I hope you don't think I'm too weird.